Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Hannibal Season 2, Episode 10, Nakachoco. The episode, in a nutshell, is a brief summary of what happened in the episode. So the episode begins with Randall's body, or at least parts of his body, being put on display in the Natural Science Museum where he had worked, and his skin is basically stretched over a saber-toothed skeleton. And Will and Hannibal and Jack are all on scene to look at the body, and Hannibal and Will basically tandem profile, while Will then has a bit of a hallucination of Randall to the side talking to him about, how the display isn't for him but for Will, and that they've both had their becoming, and how now Randall is who he should have always been. And then he gives basically the profile that it was someone who met Randall, understood him, and there's familiarity in it, etc. We then have Will leaving that scene to visit Freddie in her motel room, where she basically talks about how the book deal. So when she came to visit him in the prison when he was still behind bars, they made a deal and she got rights to write a book about him. And she's now starting to interview him. We then move on from that interview to Margot in therapy with Hannibal, and Hannibal talks about how she wasn't able to kill Mason because some part of her still loves him, and she has to learn how to truly hate him for her to be able to kill him. And she points out that it was actually really lucky she didn't kill him because her father's will essentially states that only males can inherit, so if Mason had died, as there's no legitimate male heir, it would have instead gone to a church charity, um, basically all of the inheritance, and nothing would have come to her. And Hannibal then goes on to talk about what kind of legacy she would like to leave. Does she want to have a legacy? Maybe she should make a legacy. Hint, hint. Margot then gets back from horse riding, and Mason is waiting for her in the barn, which is her brother, and he then basically leads her to a barn that has a maze set up inside of it, and he explains that Carlos had once fed a man to pigs while he was alive 20 years before, and has been helping him to train these pigs in order to devour live bodies. And they've been doing this training by dressing up meat to look like a human in her suit, add sense of humanity like her perfume, and then play screams like her screams whenever they feed the pigs to get them used to kind of eating essentially what looks like a person, so that when the real thing happens and they actually put a person in there, the pigs will feed on them. This, of course, gets her to once again think about what Hannibal had suggested or hinted at, and so Margot goes to visit Will, and Will points out that he doesn't have the part she has proclivities for, but they do end up being intimate together, which parallels Alana and Hannibal also being intimate at the same time. We then have the next day Freddie approaching Alana as she's leaving work to basically tell her that she was right about Will and Will was right about Hannibal, and that there's some sort of like team effort, and tries to get Alana to see reason, but realizes that she's sleeping with Hannibal and therefore is too close to see it, and Alana gets in her car and leaves. Hannibal then makes a visit to Mason, who basically wants to meet his sister's psychiatrist as he's the one paying for it. And they then talk about pigs and the quality of pigs. And Hannibal suggests that basically confirms that client doctor privilege means that he can't tell Mason what Margot says, but he also can't tell anybody else. He also suggests that Mason might also want to get therapy. And then Mason offers him a pig, and Hannibal says that he will choose his own pig, as is his way, and thanks him for it. Then we go fast forward to dinner where he is serving the pig and its various pieces to Will and Alana, who have come for dinner. And they discuss Freddie Lowndes and her theories on Will and Hannibal and the crossing of boundaries that Hannibal and Will seem to always do, like patient and doctor, friend and enemy, so on and so forth. And then after this dinner, we see Hannibal waiting for Freddie in her motel room whilst wearing his plastic murder suit. But Freddie doesn't arrive there. Instead, we see that she pulls up to Will's house and she notices like that the door is locked, the dogs are inside. She then goes snooping about the property, picking the lock on the barn, and when she goes inside the barn, she's able to see Randall's suit hung up. And she then goes to a freezer that's in there. She unlocks that freezer and she sees at first what looks like meat. However, after shifting some of the meat around, she pulls out what is very obviously a human jaw, which is, of course, when she looks up and Will is there. And he basically tells her to hear him out, that, he can explain what she's found. And she holds up a gun, telling him to get away from the exit. She shoots at him. They struggle. She gets away. She makes it to her car where she dials Jack. It goes to the answering machine, and then basically he breaks the car window, drags her out of the car while she's screaming. And that is when we then transition to Jack's office, where he is playing the message that was left on his phone, which of course is her screaming. And Alana and Hannibal are also in the office, and Will claims that he was supposed to have a meeting with Freddie, but she had never showed up. And Wolftrap is very out in the boonies, so anything could have happened to her, but he did not see her, and she did not show up for the interview. We then move on to Will and Hannibal in the kitchen, where Will says that he'll provide the meat and Hannibal will tell him what to do with it. He puts down the meat. Hannibal asks what kind of meat it is. He asks him what he thinks and basically describes the pig as female, therefore implying that, basically he implies the meat is Freddy's. And Hannibal then cooks together with him, and then they are at the dinner table eating it. They talk about the meat, and Will does reveal that it's long pig, not regular pig. And this is how we end the episode, with them eating what is presumed to be Freddy. Which brings us now to the part where we rank the episode, and as always, we're ranking on our mostly objective ranking, followed by the personal ranking. So on our mostly objective rank values, we have 2 points for our multi-episode supporting character introduction, which is Carlos Diogracias, who again had supposedly fed a man to pigs 20 years ago, and that is why Mason has hired him to help him train his special breed of pigs that he's been crossbreeding to be vicious and eat people. We then have our multi-season supporting character introduction worth 3 points, which of course is Mason Verger, We've heard Margot talk about Mason and talk about her brother before, but this is the first time that he is appearing fully on screen as a character. And we see him interacting with his pigs, with Margot, and also with Hannibal. We then get our multi-season supporting character development, which is of course that Freddy is attacked in Will's barn and is presumed to be dead as she was dragged off, and then it's heavily implied in the dinner scene that it was her they were eating. And then we have worth another 3 points, bringing us up to 11 positive points. The impactful, memorable, moment line, etc. And I feel like this is the pig feeding scene, which Mason has with Margot. It's very memorable. It's very disturbing. It leaves both a memory and an impact. So that's that. And then we have our negative for the episode, which is that while there were like new characters introduced, there were things happening. I felt like every single thing that happened in this episode, like every single event, every single conversation, every single interaction, was very clearly setting up for future events, future interactions, future twists, future turns. It felt very much like getting the ducks in the row so that they can then move the story along in the coming episodes. And we are getting pretty close. So we're 3 episodes away, not including this one, from the finale of the season. So it does make sense that they are needing to start setting up their final conflicts and their final dramas, etc. And the thing is, the episode felt that way. Even though things were happening, it really felt like we're just setting up for other things. So I took 1 point off, but that still left us with a 10 out of 10. So that brings our season 2 ranking so far in our mostly objective ranking. 2 in first, Kaiseki, Mukozuke, Shizukana. This episode comes in fourth, Nakachoko, which is in fourth because when more than one episode has the same ranking within the mostly objective ranking, they will be ranked in episode order. Then we have Futamono in fifth, Yakimono, Suzukane, Hasun, Sakazuke, and then Takawase in 10th so far. Moving on to my personal ranking. So I did like this episode. I did feel that there were certain significant things that did occur, such as, of course, the display of Randall's body, the finding of the jaw in the freezer, which means that Will did have some of Randall left, and that does make sense because, of course, the display at the museum had skin stretched over the bones, but it wasn't really his full body there. We obviously get to meet Mason, who Margot has given us a reputation to precede him, and we now get to actually see him interacting both with Margot and then with Hannibal. Margot basically is prodded or hinted at by Hannibal to create a legacy, i.e., a child, as if there is a legitimate male heir, then Mason is no longer needed. So she then approaches Will, of all people, to decide to make her heir with him. And they have their little thing. Well, Hannibal and Elena are still having their little thing. Obviously, like I said, the memorable and impactful in a disturbing way pig eating scene is in this episode. Margaret potentially getting pregnant in the episode. Freddy's attack is in the episode. And then Will basically feeding Hannibal or cooking with Hannibal and then eating with him. Long Pig, implied to be Freddy Lowndes, is in this episode. So we have a lot, but like I said in the objective, a lot of it feels like we're just building to future events. And I did feel like the episode felt a little bit dragged on. Like they spent way more time than they needed to on the Margot Will slash Hannibal Alana paralleling intimacy. I'm personally not interested in that, not really a fan of it. So didn't really enjoy that. What time was left was all very good, but again, felt like building to more. So I decided to give the episode a 7 out of 10 ranking, which brings the personal ranking for season 2 so far to, in first, Yakimono, Myokozuke, Shizakana, Hasan, Kaiseki, Futamono, Suzakana, Sakazuke. Nakachoko is in ninth place, and then in 10th, Takawase. Bringing us finally to our final segment, which is our series ranking so far. And on our mostly objective ranking, we had season 1 ending with 83.85%, and season 2 so far has a score of 83 out of 130. And then on the personal ranking side, we had season 1 ending with a score of 66.92%. And so far in season 2, we have scored 86 points out of a possible 130. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Hannibal Season 2, Episode 10, Nakachoko. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.